Gigantic is back, and it's bigger, better, larger, more enormous, and more gigantic than ever. Are you curious about this multiplayer release but not sure if it's for you? Well, I'm here to help. Here's every single reason you need to play Gigantic. So what exactly is Gigantic? Well, Gigantic is a cross between a MOBA and a hero shooter. It's actually not quite a new game, being released back in 2017. It had a hard time with publishers struggling to find a nice home on any of the major platforms, and was eventually shut down for what people assumed would be forever. However, by sheer willpower, Gigantic's avid fanbase somehow convinced Arc Games Publishing to pick the game back up 6 whole years after its discontinuation. Re-released this past week on all major platforms, it suffered some server issues day one, but now is pretty much free from those issues, and it's a ton of fun. It's unfortunate that this is a selling point, but Gigantic also has 0 microtransactions whatsoever. You don't even have the option to buy currency. Every hero skin, weapon skin, and other cosmetic in the game is purchasable with the in-game currency, which is also fairly plentiful. The way I see it, Gigantic is the best of both those genres I mentioned earlier. It has the strategic team-based gameplay and build crafting of MOBAs like League of Legends, Smite, and Dota, while also committing to the unique approach to individual character design in games like Overwatch, Team Fortress 2, and Valorant. Although these two genres are fairly similar, they are a bit different, and by combining the two of them, it also steers clear of their usual trappings. On a surface level, Gigantic strips down its MOBA elements, mainly by not including an item shop. By taking this away, it removes the learning curve of item building, making it much more new player friendly. Rather than focusing on raw stats and how they affect gameplay, players are more inclined to learn individual characters rather than items. It also removes the frustration of feeling locked to a certain playstyle. Most characters in hero shooters, especially Overwatch, have a very specific playstyle, one that has been dictated by the developers to fill a specific job. What makes Gigantic so special is the amount of expression and variety available to you. With the inclusion of a stamina bar, it gives the player more options in how they want to approach combat. Sprinting, jumping, and dodging all use stamina, which can be recovered out of combat or with certain abilities. This makes fights more dynamic but also very high commitment, requiring you to go all in or play sort of reserved if you think you'll need to escape. The inclusion of jump and dodge attacks expand the player's options even further, and with the way builds work, you have a very wide range of opportunities to hone your playstyle. The heroes in this game are broken up into 4 categories: range DPS, melee DPS, frontline, and support. I know this pretty much contradicts what I just said, but just give it a second. Aside from only a few exceptions, every character can be played in several different ways. One of the characters that I gravitated towards most is Vodin, because he had a bow and arrow. That's it, his design just appealed to me. I was a little disappointed because I then saw he was classified as a range DPS/support, and I wasn't sure if I would like him, but after a couple games I realized that the categories they're broken into are really just suggestions, honestly. Gigantic's build crafting is centered entirely around the character's abilities. Each has 5 abilities with 6 total upgrades each and 1 passive talent. For every hero, there are 2 preset upgrade paths meant for specific purposes. These are great, especially if you're just starting out, but exploring custom paths is where things get a little crazy. You can manually upgrade them in-game, or you can create upgrade paths that will automatically invest into certain abilities when you reach a certain level. Rather than just increasing damage or reducing cooldown, each upgrade can change how the ability works fundamentally or how it works in conjunction with another part of your character's kit. My favorite build with Vodin so far has been focused mainly on mobility and damage, with a little bit of self-sustain. One option for the poison zone he drops down in the ground allows it to be a throwable bomb, and another gives it the ability to home. Of course, I then combine that with a couple upgrades to give his decoy more combat power, including one that gives it its own poison bomb. Along with making his healing pool give Vodin jump height and a passive upgrade to his sprint and stamina, I created my own playstyle. In another game, this character easily could have been a lot less fun to me, despite finding his design and weapon very appealing. In Gigantic, though, I was able to modify the parts I didn't like while focusing on the parts I did, making Vodin the perfect character for me. Despite this long-winded example about one character, you can really do this with anybody. You can make Rutger, who is technically a tank, an unstoppable killing machine, or you can play him as an unkillable mole man. If you'd like, you can make Griselma, who is a support, a high damage backline minion summoner, or you can play her as a true support to your team. I could go on, but even the 2 alternative playstyles I mentioned for each of those characters aren't the limit, nor are they even close to it. Before you start playing Gigantic, it's important to understand the 2 modes available. The first mode is Rush. Rush is a new game type added with Gigantic's re-release that is essentially a sped up and simplified version of the original mode, Clash, which we'll talk about in a minute, of course. In both of these, your objective is pretty much the same. It's how you get there that will vary. You'll be on one of 2 teams, either with the big griffin thing or the massive dragon. Your main goal is to kill the other team's gigantic guardian, but it's not as simple as just walking over there and shooting it. At the top of the screen next to each guardian, you'll see a number. This is how much power your team currently has. Power will be gained one of 2 ways. It will accrue at these points on the map, and once it's charged, someone from either team can claim it by standing on top and holding a specific button, which is worth 20. This can be interrupted if that person dies or is CC'd out of the action, and you'll often have to fight over these orbs of power. Each time you kill a player on the other team, you'll also gain 10 power. At 100, your team's guardian will make its way over to the other and pin it down, opening a weak spot that allows your team to damage it. As soon as its health bar is all gone, your team wins, of course. It's almost impossible to take down that whole bar in one go, especially if the enemy team defending it is any good. But again, this is the fast mode. To make sure games don't go on for too long, the more times a rampage happens, the more damage each guardian will take. This makes it easier to turn the tables the longer a game goes on, especially since every character starts at max level with max abilities as soon as the game starts. No one is going to be ahead on level, which makes every game of Rush pretty much even. While Rush is pretty fun and doesn't go on for too long, there's a decent chance it might become completely irrelevant to you once you unlock Clash. Because it goes by so quickly and sheds the complexity from most of the systems, you may only be queuing up Rush when you're just starting out, you're playing with a new friend, or you're in a crunch for time. Unless you're a bigger fan of games like Overwatch and not so much traditional, slower-paced MOBAs, Rush might actually turn you off the game, which is a bit unfortunate. The biggest problem with the mode for me is that you can actually switch your character and build when you die, like in, again, Overwatch and Paladins, which, at least as far as I'm concerned, takes the strategy away from forming a certain team comp. It takes all the stakes out of picking a character. But that's precisely where Clash comes in. In this mode, you start at level 1, and you can't change your character or build. You'll get experience from a bunch of different things, which will allow you to level up, giving you a skill point, enabling you to upgrade one of your abilities. The objective in Clash is more or less the same: gain power, kill the Guardian, but now there's an exciting new way to gain power. When you go up to the circles, anyone is able to summon creatures. There are 7 types of creatures, which each of these types have their own subtypes that do slightly different things. Some are straight damage, some create environmental hazards, some heal, etc. In the pregame, you can choose 3 from this wide pool of creatures, each of which also has a certain number of times they can be summoned and can also be upgraded. Creatures can be placed on points that are designated on your side of the map. Some points are available to both teams, so you'll have to fight over them with the other for most of the game. When creatures are down, they'll automatically collect power when it charges. When they're put down, they begin as youth, and although they are still useful, they're even more so fully grown. You can grow creatures by using your focus, which is essentially your ult charge. It charges by doing most things like healing, dealing damage, you get it. This focus can charge and store 3 points. You can use your ultimate with 1 point, but its effect scales with how many of these points you have. Because of this, you're going to have to do some decision making with your focus. You can either spend the focus on upgrading creatures, making them more useful and harder to kill, or you can burn it on your ultimate, helping out your team and maybe netting a couple of kills. Each rampage also requires a bit of decision making. Once the enemy team's guardian is vulnerable, you can either go and deal damage to it, support your team by dealing with the enemies trying to kill them, or you can trade some damage and take a shot at one of the other team's creatures while they're distracted and defending their guardian. The ramping damage mechanic isn't part of this mode either, so your team's performance is a lot more dependent on taking fights properly rather than waiting until the damage multiplier is high enough and then just deciding to play more seriously. Another key difference is that each guardian has 3 health bars. Once one of the guardians reaches their final life, a clash occurs, which causes the map to go through a major change, moving certain points around and changing the overall flow of the battlefield. This change can often lead to a surprising shift in the match's dynamic, maybe favoring the losing team's playstyle and overall making the match a lot more competitive. This gives the losing team a chance to come back, even if they're catastrophically behind. Whereas Rush is more casual, faster paced, and for a different audience, Clash is there for fans of the original Gigantic and the people who enjoy slower paced, more strategic gameplay. Regardless of which one you are, I sincerely hope that you play and enjoy Gigantic. Thank you so much for watching. Reading the script back, I'm realizing it was just a little bit messy, but I hope you enjoyed anyway, and I really hope that Gigantic looks like fun to you. If you did like the video, I strongly urge you to like and leave a comment. It helps more than you know. If you'd like to see more content like this, you could even subscribe. With all that being said, thanks again for tuning in. Have a great night, and I'll catch you in the next one.